Hi there. I'm going to talk about the movie Aliens. This movie was directed by James Cameron and released in 1986. Um, this movie, kind of like the entire Alien franchise itself, is kind of an amusing series of movies. The first movie was directed by Ridley Scott as a direct horror suspense. The term alien wasn't really referring to the creature, it was referring to something of alien stature as a metaphor. This movie, not quite the same affiliation, more or less. I don't know. I got sketchy impressions of exactly how it got the name Aliens. It sounds like James Cameron just said, "Hey, let's call it Aliens. It'll be a money grab, a money maker." Um, Nonetheless, it works well. James Cameron, of course, went in a little bit more action heavy. Went with a little bit different kind of dialogue. The movie's almost totally different than Alien, um, although it's got all the same pieces in there. I mean, they have all the movies have androids in them, so that's a kind of a given that there's gonna be an android. Movie basically is about the fact that Weyland-Yutani trying the same thing. The colony, for more or less. Ellen Ripley. Actually, the movie opens up. Ellen Ripley has been floating through space for like what 57 years. Gets back home. No, it doesn't get back home. Gets taken in by a salvage team. Ends up back in the space station that presumably is orbiting Earth. But basically, the company is trying to find out information from her. Also, uh, putting her on trial, almost revoking her license and everything. But nonetheless, she is trying to explain why the heck they had to, self-destruct Nostromo, and why the crew's all dead. Uh, it's got kind of the James Cameron flourish. There's not much time given over to healing and emotional disturbances of realizing that everybody you know is dead. But whatever, it's. I think that's a continuing plot element of all the films. But nonetheless, it harkens back to the colony. The company Weyland-Yutani established a colony on LV 426, which is the planet from the first movie. More or less, they lose contact with it, and they have to send in a group of colonial marines led by an inexperienced captain. And they were going to initially end up leaving Ellen Ripley behind, but then Ellen changes her mind, decides to join them on this little run. Um, and more or less, it's run slow, just like Alien does, for a long time. I think it's about 40 minutes in that they finally start to do something. But nonetheless, they have to establish the fact that the station is not, the colonial outpost is not operating. They find this kid who I think has gone down in history as about the only child actor who got a name put into space, into the world, for being only in one film. I mean, most child actors are not this well known. It's amazing how well known this person is. I for I think she's a school teacher now. But no, it's just funny watching it because this is one of the few movies where a kid, is introduced and sells it so well that basically uh, her name's been cemented, and yet for some strange reason, there's so many child actors who never really go down in history. But nonetheless, her name is Newt, and of course, she has the dire warning that the colonial marines aren't going to be enough. But it doesn't really matter, as they are not enough. They are not prepared for the alien threat. They apparently have no idea what they are doing. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose was of sending these Marines. I guess the company was trying to play dumb on this one and pretend that they didn't need a more experienced captain and a group of guys that might actually take their mission a bit more seriously. But nonetheless, this franchise movies always has a comedic aspect to it. They've been having that ever since Alien. I mean, they're always breaking protocols. But nonetheless, they find out they are no match for the aliens. And of course, most of the team gets killed in the bowels of the because they've been terraforming LV-426 with what appears to be a nuclear-powered terraforming device, which leads to an entire rest of the plot where they basically have to get the heck off the planet because the little firefight damaged something, and now the power plant is emitting coolant steam, emergency venting. And so it introduces all these scenarios. Basically, they gotta try and figure out how to stop the aliens from getting in. And of course, the aliens get in. The aliens eventually figure out how to get in. The movie's continues the subplot about having robots on board on these crew missions. Of course, Ripley is wise to this android this time because of what happened in the first movie. In this movie, she sort of finds out by accident because this guy is fundamentally different than in the first android. Though I think that's the main difference. This guy is a little bit different. He's not in on the joke, or he's better at covering it up. He's better at dealing with the end hoax. He apparently has some sensation of morality where he's not just trying to get the alien. I don't know. They don't make it entirely clear in this movie if he was programmed to take the alien away from the planet. It's not very clear at all. Not to spoiler alert, but in Alien 3, they sort of clarify that, but I don't know if that should be considered plot canon or not, because that's very much something that was only talked about in the third film. But in this film, no, they don't have... The robot don't know if he's like the robot from the first movie where he's been programmed to deal with this organism. Not entirely clear. Nonetheless, this movie is a little bit different than the first. The first movie has some cutscenes that were scenes that were cut, showing the alien's mode for recreating itself, where it's creating new eggs and stuff. This movie just kind of goes right in the heart of the territory of saying that aliens have a queen, and she's much bigger than the rest, and she lays lots of eggs. But nonetheless, it's a good movie. I think that the only part of this movie that gets kind of grating to listen to is the dialogue at times, especially Hodgson. He at first is epitomizing the idea of the big, I don't know, over the top action sequence, action hero type. He's almost too cliche, but I'm not sure that his cliche standard had been established yet when this movie came out. I think that was something that was still a few years away. I think actually it wasn't really established until after like the Predator movies came out. But nonetheless, this movie does a good job of establishing the need for a thriller and suspense. There's a particularly suspenseful scene where the girl gets lost, separated from the group for a second, and of course an alien comes up and takes her and misleads Ellen Ripley into the heart of the reactor area where she has to deal with the alien queen and take Newt back. And of course, this is one of the great female action hero moments of history, where Ellen is going down the bowels, and so she's got a flamethrower and she's got the automatic targeting device, the pulse rifle. All in all, it ends well enough. They of course have that extra scene where, just like in the first movie, they have the extra scene where things seem good until they're not good. And of course, the android almost, I'm not sure you could call it killed, but it's not doing so hot at the end of the movie. And Ellen has to, of course, find a way to get rid of the alien queen, and that involves a similar sequence of her blowing the alien queen out of the ship, getting it out of there. Not entirely clear what happens to it, but nonetheless, it can be declared as possibly dead. Not entirely clear. Nonetheless, the movie ends kind of on a good note, a little bit better note than probably the first movie. I mean, none of these movies ends particularly well. They're all kind of depressing at the end. This movie just ends a little bit differently than the other ones because, of course, I think they had to end it that way. They couldn't end it with a backstab type moment like what happened. Theoretically, that's what happened. That's what's shown off to be, except in the third movie. But nonetheless, it's a pretty good film. It works. Um, I don't know. So yeah, I think it's a good movie. Thanks.